Hey guys, welcome to Sketch and Talk. Really cool to have you guys over here. I'm super excited about this show, and it's the first episode. Yeah, good to have you here. Basically, I'll just explain a bit about the show, about myself, and then we move on to the interesting stuff. So I'm Maor Sharvit. I'm a designer and a visual development artist, and I've been working in different studios, especially in Europe. And I'm also a teacher at the Animation Club. Have a course there, and I'm super passionate about drawing, about illustration, about design for animation. Animation is something I'm super excited about. Also cinema, and I love talking about this stuff. And I came up with this show as a way to just, I don't know, have cool people from the industry come over and answer my questions and hang out with me. And I was thinking this could be a really cool way to meet new people and learn about the way they see things in the industry and how they approach art and art life and career and all of that stuff. And I thought it could be also useful and interesting to other people, for other people to listen to and learn from. So this is how I came up with this show. And in this show, basically, it's about talking. It's about learning about like the guests and like hanging out. But it's also it's not so much as of an interview show. It's more about just hanging out together, one professional on another, and just letting the conversation flow. And I think it could lead to some really interesting discussions. So it's kind of a more organic format. And I also want to give a shout out to Animation Club, who sponsored and produced this show. It's really, really cool. They did a really cool job. And actually, you guys should check them out. It's a really cool platform for education in animation. They have different courses on 3D and 2D animation, also visual development, which I'm instructing. And you should check out my course, which is coming next, if you're interested. So that's about it. And now for the interesting part, I want to introduce Adam Dix. Hey, Adam.
Hello.
Hey, man. Super cool to have you here. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing? Like, what are you up to these days? I just want to say that Adam is I'll just introduce Adam. Adam is a character and prop designer. He's working and living in LA. He's worked for clients like Disney TV, Netflix, and Nickelodeon, and also has been teaching character design Art Center College. He's known for his expressive and cartoony style, and his super popular Instagram page with over, I think, 66,000 followers. Crazy.
Yeah.
And me and Adam kind of knew each other for, I think, a few years now. We met in Paris, right?
We
met
did.
to sketch a bit, yeah. And we just stayed in touch online, and it's been a pleasure. So thanks for coming over.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So,
so how do we start this?
What are you up to these days?
I am currently working on a project over at Fox called The Great North. I just rolled off of working on the Cuphead show, which will come out on February 18th on Netflix. Both of which I was doing prop design and effects design.
Nice.
But that's
if you guys haven't checked out the latest trailer they released, it's eye candy.
It's
so
I'm
so
really
beautiful.
I'm really proud of the whole team. It's like it's so
just
good.
the art direction and like just the overall quality of everything. The backgrounds are gorgeous, so beautiful. Like all this retro styles, like 40s animation. They nailed it, really. Super cool. It's 40s, like 60. What type? What exactly?
It's meant to be like Rubber Hose inspired. So I would say like from the 20s to the 40s, somewhere in there. A lot of reference really, sort of within that chunk that we pulled.
Nice. Yeah, and it's coming up like this month, right? Like February?
February, yeah. The 18th, so right in the middle.
Awesome. Can't wait. And they're dropping the whole show at one time, or like
That I'm not sure about. I assume they'll be doing it in like chunks. That tends to be the way that it's done, where they'll, as the episodes come in, once like a certain amount of them come in, then they'll do like an
like
8
they
to
did
10
in
episode drop.
Arcane, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Same thing happened with like Centaur World and the other shows.
Super cool. All right. So basically, the interesting part about this show is that Adam is gonna now share his screen, and I guess we're just gonna be we're gonna keep talking, but like Adam will be just doodling stuff while we're doing that, just so we have a bit more of a visual show, and also we get a peek into his incredible twisted brain. And yeah, so basically, Adam, you can just sketch anything you want. You guys also on the watching, you can just share your questions or even suggestions for what you want Adam to draw. And yeah, I also have a bank of topics for drawing if you wanna, if you wanna hear, if you don't have a subject right now. So just let me know.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. I'm gonna keep working on this. I've been this morning to warm up because I didn't want to come in
Nice.
unprepared. I have been drawing this little Incan kid.
Cool,
So
cool.
I'll probably.
Okay, so I'm just gonna ask you a few questions and
Go for it.
And know you while you're drawing. So I guess let's just hear a bit about your past. I'm always interested when I talk to other artists to know how they started out and what drew them into animation drawing. So when did you find out like that you like to draw as a kid?
So that's a good question. My parents are both relatively creative people. We grew up in South America. My parents are both American, but my mom specifically was grew up in a house with an interior designer, so there was a creative influence there. And instead of her purchasing a lot of home decor, she would make her own. So there was always crafts and painting and artistic elements in the house. And my dad, when he was younger, used to draw quite often and would draw. He would give us tattoos and would like draw on our arms and our legs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's great. Do funny little characters. And so there was always just this like playfulness that kind of went on within our family that encouraged a lot of drawing. And my mom was really into like Disney movies and the Disney parks. And so when we were living in South America, the thing that we would often get as far as gifts from our grandparents was Disney films. So those became kind of an obsessive element in our house growing up that influenced a lot of my love for animation. But I also had this really interesting, like in Chile growing up, we didn't have cartoons from the 90s or like the late 80s. So we watched a lot of old Tom and Jerry's and like all the old Warner Brothers and all the old Disneys, because that's what was available on television. So I kind of inadvertently was given this gift of old, beautiful, fully hand-drawn, fully hand-animated, like unlimited animation.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Was great.
So basically you grew up in a really kind of artistic environment, or at least like an environment that kind of encourages creativity.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And so you draw a lot as a kid, or like were you like the kid who draws in class?
Oh yes,
like most of us.
Yeah. I mean, drawing partially was slightly escapist for me. Like I would often use it as I like to sort of live in these fantastical places, and there's always been a slight otherness to the way that I've fit in anywhere. So like it was always like this safe space that I could explore and sort of begin to resolve problems and figure things out. And not being Chilean, there was an element of sort of needing maybe a little bit of like me time to process. And that just became sort of the reason in the way that I saw the world and interacted with it was by drawing.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. For me as a kid, it's okay, this is getting a bit personal, but like as a kid, I was the kid who draws in class. And I think that once you're tagged as that, it kind of hunts you. It becomes your, I don't know, the way people define you, and eventually the way you start to define your own value. So I think as a kid, I kind of came to the conclusion that like, okay, if that's who I am, if I'm the kid who draws, then I have to be good at it. So I just started like practicing a lot and like, growing into the role.
Well, I think that that's similar to like how all of us who got into drawing really like any talent is really just encouraged practice, right? Like we fell in
Yeah.
love with drawing because we were encouraged at being good at it, and so we found value in spending time with it. The only talent is that we just didn't get bored with it. We just kept
Yeah, I
drawing.
guess so. Yeah. I mean, we had something to keep us like pushing forward, keep doing it. I mean, it could be many things. It could be encouragement. It could be, I don't know, the fact you decided that that's what you want to do in life or whatever. So what were you usually drawing like as a kid? Was it characters?
Yeah, I think it was. I like character a lot. I think that's always been, I mean, for everybody, I think that's always the connecting point, is the empathy side of it. And I was a very emotional child, to say it nicely. So the characters were always the part that super interested me. And I tried taking other courses and other classes to be like, oh well, art is art, and I should really like love all of it. And I've come to realize that there are certain gifts that I just do not have, or interests that I don't have, and characters were always the thing that drew me in, particularly the performative element. I liked that,
like posing.
the posing. Yeah, I liked that I could feel what the character was feeling simply by how I posed them, by how I emoted with them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Actually, as a kid, I didn't think much about posing. I was really, I guess, fascinated like with shapes. Like I would really, for example, when I was learning, I was obsessed with Disney's Tarzan, and I would just copy the shapes and think about, oh, that's like a graphic triangle and stuff. And like, I didn't really think about. There was nobody who taught me how to pose and how to think about this stuff. I only had to learn it like later on, like in art school and stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, that I think. Well, and I think in terms of like how your process and my process and with design works, like it's evident that those two, like that we are both very different in that way of thinking. Like your stuff is so beautifully designed with its shapes. I hardly consider it. Like I do consider my balance of proportions, and I do consider, the kinds of shapes that I'm using in terms of what it says about them emotionally. But most of the work that I do and most of the heavy lifting is purely based on posing for me. Whereas I think for you, it's the opposite. Yours is, I don't know, you always like looking at your stuff, and particularly how, like where your stuff has gone in the last couple of years. It's really fascinating to see how you organize your shapes.
Yeah, it's a process. I'm still learning, and I think who I am as an artist all the time. What really interests me. Posing, even though it's like a new thing for me, it's fascinating. I love it. I'm always trying to really get better at it, and looking at artists that really have mastered the craft.
With that said, like you and I do hop on calls at least every month or two to like be like, can you just look at this real quick?
Oh yeah.
I need a note. I can't figure this out. This is your strength.
Yeah. No, you've been really helpful. I remember getting out of college and just trying to build up my portfolio and like contacting you about like all these new projects I was doing. I learned a ton with those calls. I think it's really important to have someone in your life who's like, who knows their shit, and you feel comfortable enough to really ask and get like an opinion on your art. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just has so much value, because you can really get far with like, you know, tutorials and like online courses, but like having someone actually look at your art and say, no, this line doesn't belong there and stuff, you know, it's just
Yeah,
different. It has so much value. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah. I certainly like, if I have a mentor type figure that did that for me, particularly while I was in college. This guy named Matt Lunn, who at the time was over at Pixar running or working on, well, he worked on like Toy Story 3 and started off as like an animator on Toy Story 1,
Oh, wow.
became a story artist, but he was always like that like extra voice to just be like, try this out, check this out.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
it's part like because of him and like the impact he had, like that's why I began teaching, because I was like, oof, I needed that so much. I need to do that for other people too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So basically, you grew up as a the kid who draws in class, and you were encouraged and watched all these, you know, animated movies. And at some point, you decide, okay, that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go to study. Like, which school did you go to?
I went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. And how was that?
it was good. It came with its own challenges. The school within its structure, it well, part of it was that like it wasn't portfolio based, so it was easy to get into, and then it
Mm.
was hard to find like the people to surround yourself by that would like push you farther.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. And that's
you
actually
know,
so important. It's like such a huge part of learning.
yeah. So I had to be really proactive in the school to find that group of people and to find, the challenges. And I'm not trying to make myself sound very good. It was frustrating to like start a class as like the top two or three,
Mm.
of each class, and so there wasn't a lot of challenge, but mostly with the school not having a portfolio based entrance, which, to its credit, let in a lot of people who were able to learn and become brilliant because, that had no previous experience. Like it's
Yeah.
a method that they went with. Uh,
But for
but
those of you who actually had experience
who
and
grew up
needed that push,
drawing,
yeah,
right, who needed that push, it was a matter of trying to find that group of people. And then once I did, you know, suddenly things made sense. But I very specifically like didn't take any general education classes. I took only art classes, and I always tried to like skip classes and like portfolio out of them, just like compete with higher level students that
yeah,
were about to graduate, and I was, within my second year. Um, so I was super hungry for it. I just wanted to draw constantly, and ultimately found a really wonderful group of friends. I started working with the grad students who were all there to get, their masters in animation and art, and I'm trying to get my bachelor's, my first degree in it. But working with them, of all the people that I went to college with, that's the group that is working most because they really committed and found that sense of family. And I felt lucky that I got to be part of it.
that's awesome. Yeah, I went to the animation workshop in Denmark, and it's a brilliant school. Like the program is beautiful, and it's led by such amazing people who really care about the education and the students. But yeah, also in my case, like everyone in class kind of, you know, was very studential level, very beginners. And I really had to look for people in like, you know, second or third year to really find, you know, that inspiration that like, you know, really find those people who are just, oh my God, I can't believe they're so good. I want to be like them.
Yeah.
And one of them was Jeremy Becker, who actually left in third year to work on Klaus. And I
Uh,
remember him showing me like the test he did, and like it's just a brilliant, brilliant animator.
yeah.
And it was really cool to talk to him and like get his critique on my assignment and stuff. Because this guy was just, he was another student. You could just hang out with him and stuff, but like his level was just so high. It was a gift, really. And
Well,
I
that
think
is
that's
that is a
that's
good
one of the
point,
cool
though.
things
Is
about going to like education. The people you get to meet, the
Mhm.
connections.
It's true. Yeah, the amount of people you meet and sort of where their careers and their livelihoods, like their skills, are going to take them. Even then you don't know what that's going to look like. So like humility and just like being good as a person makes a real big impact, because those are the people that will ultimately influence your career and your life down the line.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. And how was the program itself that you took? Was it like
Um, it
good?
was it was honestly pretty good. It needed maybe a little bit more focus, I would say. But overall, like the classes weren't easy. The teachers were very, very good. Um, but I don't feel like I was ever sure what like the curriculum, like the order had anything to do with anything.
Hmm.
Um, but there was a lot of challenge. I actually was not in the animation course. I was in they were creating a visual development course, and what that wasn't clearly defined yet. So a lot of the classes that I took were, you know, old-fashioned illustration courses. So learning to
Wow.
paint in
Oh, so you
gouache and
actually went to like visual development, like did a bachelor,
Mhm.
did a degree in that. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But
rare. Like there aren't that many programs to do that. Like I
yeah,
also I studied animation. Most of the time it was just drawing on, flipping papers.
yeah. Uh, I feel like the one thing I wish that I had done was maybe focus a little bit more on the animation side of things, especially with like working as a character designer.
Mm.
Understanding how animation works and like how your designs are being used for animation makes a
Yep.
really big difference in understanding like how the model needs to move and how it needs to function. And that's one thing that like I had to figure out on my own. And I think luckily, since I lean into more performative sort of gestural drawing, I have a bit more of an instinct for it. But oftentimes people will go in and do design and do these beautiful designs that are completely terrible for animation. That, it's a matter of figuring out how they're constructed. And I wish
Oh
that
yeah.
there had been maybe a little bit more time with the animation. But again, the school was just developing this program. They didn't quite know, how it should be structured and how it should look. So we were kind of guinea pigs, and we were thrown into, half illustration courses, half animation courses. So
Hmm.
I had to do 3D animation and 2D animation, but then I also had to do like illustration 1 and 2 and 3, and
That's
learn
actually
all
that
this
actually
stuff
sounds
about.
like a really, really solid plan, good
I
combination.
mean, it made me very, I think, rather well rounded.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I feel like it took me a long time to find like the specific thing. And that's obviously like the school's job is to like make me as well rounded and workable as possible.
That's something that people don't really realize. I think it's really important to like, know what you want, and maybe like, choose courses that actually enrich you and give you the tools that you need to get work and stuff. But like for me, going to art school was partly because it was partly me just giving them my brain and say, okay, just give me what I need.
Mm-hmm.
And not all the courses were super interesting to me, but I think that if I look back, it all had like value in
Mm-hmm.
shaping me as an artist and as a person. And I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it might sound like I'm sort of being a little complaining about my
No, that's solid. It's
education,
okay.
at the same time, like my understanding of color theory, while it is something that I rarely use as I'm not a painter, I
Mm.
can still appreciate when I'm out in the world, like if there's snow on the ground and like the shadows are somehow like vibrant purple, and I notice it and geek out on it
Yeah.
because I understand what's happening with the physics and
Yeah.
how that would be illustrated. Like I can appreciate and enjoy that in a way that I would not have been able to otherwise.
Yeah. You know, I feel similarly with film because I'm a huge film buff. I love films, and I love directors, and I love seeing behind the scenes and really thinking about all the decision making in directing an image and a scene, like how you I'm in love with this art form, just. And even though I know, I mean, I don't know, but like I don't want to be a feature film director. It's not my thing. I still love how it kind of finds its way into my work. You know, just it makes me think about stuff more cinematically, and also it gives me ideas about character design or like concept art. For example, at work, I had to design this environment, and like I was talking to my art director and told him like, oh, it reminds me of that film from the 90s, so maybe we can do something like that, and maybe we can also you know, shoot it in a certain way that's similar in the show, like, and stuff. So I think like in the end, like all your fascinations, all your the stuff that you like for like from life finds its way into your art, and it's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what is she doing there? Like, what is she leaning
I'm gonna have
Oh,
I'm
it's
gonna
a
have
he.
them. I think they're gender non-specific at the moment. It could be either.
Okay.
They're gonna be petting a llama at the moment. I'm trying to figure out how I want to compose it at the moment.
Okay, cool. It's a bit close to be near a llama. They usually spit in your face.
Yeah, I've had that happen a few times.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they're arrogant. Yeah, there's a few I can think of, actually. I think maybe twice in my life when I was a kid. We, like, growing up in Chile, there are llamas everywhere, and there was some at like a local park where we were living, and you know, they're penned in sort of like horses are, and I very much got excited and ran up to it and immediately just threw its ears back and then looked at me and then spit in my face.
Nice. I wonder what it means in llama language. Like, is it maybe it's just
it means get away from me.
Oh, I guess so, yeah. But like, a naive part of me wants to say, you know, maybe we just see it like that. Actually, have you seen Dune, like the movie?
I haven't yet. No, I need
There's
to.
there's a part like in Dune where this guy comes, is summoned to the leaders, and he just comes into the room and spits on the floor while looking in their eyes, and they all stand up like, you know, what the fuck, and like then someone like comes up and and like explains to them that like actually it's a, you know, it's a way of blessing because there is so little water in this planet, so they actually give up on that little amount of humidity to, you know, to bless you and stuff. It's actually
interesting. Yeah, thing. I like that.
Yeah. So okay, let's look at the chat. So Muhammad Mamdou says, "Hi Adam, I'm a big fan."
Hello.
And he asks if you are giving some type of course or workshop at the moment.
I do teach at the Art Center College of Design here in California. In terms of any online courses, I'm currently not teaching any that are sort of out there for the general populace. But if I do, I will probably post about it on my Instagram or something. There's a few potential places that I've been having conversations with that might be able to provide a space for a broader group of people to work with. I think it's mostly just a matter of, you know, finding the time. I teach, you know, 2 classes a week at the university, and then I work a full-time job, and we have a dog in the house that we have to take care of. So it's rather busy at the moment, but it is sort of a plan that I would love to follow through in terms of making my the things that I teach a little bit more accessible.
Yeah. I think it's really nice to teach online. Actually, I've been doing that. I gave already. I taught like 2 classes on VSDev, and I think it's really nice.
Oh
Because
yeah.
first of all, you get to have
Since
students.
I can't like go to Maor's courses.
Oh yeah.
He's definitely like.
No, it's not what I was saying. I was just saying that there is something nice about like teaching. Thank you, though. It's really nice to teach online because you get students from all over the world. Like I got this students from Russia and from India and from the US and stuff, and each one is bringing something very different to the table. And I find this really exciting. And also, you get to like just wear a nice shirt and.
You don't have to wear pajamas.
Yeah, you can wear whatever you want for your pants. Okay, so for more questions, let's see. How did you get your first job?
Luck. And
Okay.
oddly, so my very first job was not in animation. My very first job was at a small gaming company in San Francisco that no longer exists.
Okay.
And it was working, animating in Flash and designing things for Facebook. these like garden decorating game.
Oh yeah. I know what you're saying. There's a lot of money in that type of stuff. No longer on Facebook, but like for mobile games and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if it hits really well, and then it works out great in terms of the finances. If it doesn't hit, then you just spent. I mean, I suppose it's no different than like making a movie or a TV show. If it doesn't hit, then you've gone and poured millions of dollars into something that makes nothing back. In this case, it was okay. It was a first job. I had a lot to learn and made a lot of mistakes, but yeah, I think I found it online and just like I think I was in my 3rd year at school and just needed to do something. I needed to feel productive, and they wanted to pay me for it. And then after that, I got a job at a place called Playdom that got bought by Disney Interactive, and that I worked in for about 4 years, doing a lot of painting, which, as I've said, is not my strength. And then we all got laid off. But my first job in animation was at Disney TV on a show called Sophia the First. And how that happened was a previous coworker of mine from Disney Interactive. Her dad was a producer on a show called Sophia the First. And after about 3 months of like putting out resumes and sending out my portfolio, I moved home with my parents. I was getting nothing, no response. And as anybody who works in this industry can tell you, studios are not particularly good at getting back to people when they have interviewed or when they have applied for things. So
even after you've tested for something, sometimes they don't even like get back to you on that.
Yeah, so I reached out to her on just a whim of desperation and asked if she wouldn't mind asking her dad to just have a look at my portfolio to advise me on sort of how I can improve it to like get work. He had a look at my portfolio and then invited me to come down and see the studio and have a chat with him. So I bought a car and then drove. Well, so I had some money saved up from when I got laid off from the previous job. And I was like, well, if I need to be driving anyway, I may as well have a car, especially if I'm not going to be living in San Francisco, which you don't need a car for. So I bought a car, drove down, met with him, and then he offered me a job. So based on his sort of like good grace and sort of seeing what potential I had, that was my first job.
That's incredible. Like
And
first
I
job
was
in
there
animation
for
at Disney. Wow.
yeah, and I was there for two years.
Mm.
Worked on development for Elena of Avalor and worked on Sophia the First. And I look back at my drawings from that time, and I let's just say he was very gracious.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's how we are, right? Like we always
Yeah.
look back and we hate our stuff. Um, it's just a part of progressing, of learning.
Yeah.
But I think it's really rare that someone gets hired. I mean, he wasn't. He saw something there. Like
He
otherwise, he
did.
wouldn't do
Yeah.
his job well. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, he did quite a lot in terms of like teaching me the pipeline of animation and like showing me, you know, what working on a show actually looked like, and you know, was very intentional with like my figuring out what it was that I wanted to do in this industry.
Yeah.
You
And how
know,
was the overall experience of working at Disney? Like the
it was good.
people, like the environment, like if I
I
can ask
mean,
also the pay.
the pay was great.
Oh,
It was the most I'd ever been paid. Gaming does not pay, or at least then for mobile gaming did not pay particularly well in comparison. And so it was a lovely jump up in my salary and my livelihood. Working there was great, and as you know, and I and anyone who sort of has been working, like every show is completely different in terms of a whole lot of factors. Part of it is like how friendly is the crew with each other, how well do they get along, how much is there of having ego. You know, there's a whole lot of elements. You know, how tough is production in terms of the schedule. You know, what's the expectation of the amount of work that you need to get done per day. Is it, you know, a strenuous schedule, or is it something that's a bit more reasonable and manageable? So this show in particular, you know, was a well-seasoned show. It had already, like, they had figured out all the struggles and like all the things that were going to be a challenge well before I got there. So it was a pretty easy job, almost, I would say actually too easy. Like I was looking for a challenge and I was looking for, you know, to learn, and, you know, I would finish my weekly assignments in a day, and then I would have an entire week to just sit there and do nothing. And I would request work and like constantly be looking for more things to do. And
that sounds pretty
sorry,
awesome. Actually, you get to do a lot of your personal work and just.
it was at first, and frankly it did allow me a lot of room and a lot of space to like experiment and work out a whole lot of like things that I needed to figure out in terms of draftsmanship and drawing and getting to, and even just like the functionality of working in this industry. But at the same time, I was like, after 6 months of that, and then a year of that, and a year and a half of that, it becomes a little bit tedious. So I eventually, after 2 years, I left Disney TV for DreamWorks, thinking myself very well established, and you know, it was a lot harder in terms of work and in terms of
Which is kind of what you wanted, right?
exactly, yeah. So I learned, you know, it's always this learning process of figuring out sort of what it is that you want, and
It's a
how
it's
it
a
is you're
bold
going
move
to.
to like say no, say goodbye to the mouse, you know.
It was, yeah, it was a
But I
bit
mean,
scary.
DreamWorks is great as well. What did you do at DreamWorks?
I worked on the Boss Baby TV show, the
Cool.
first season.
That one looks really good.
Yeah, that was the first sort of moment that I felt like I was really being trusted to design sort of based on my own instincts. I was, you know, a character design team of just me. So it was very much, you know, and my art director, you know, came from maquette sculpting and came from working in live action, and it just, the sensibilities were different. So he put a lot of trust sort of in me to design what needed to be designed. And there were a lot of limitations because the technology wasn't, quite as forgiving at the time. And I had to resolve, like, we were only allowed to create one new character per episode. So it was super, super limiting.
So you had to do a lot of reuse and stuff, right?
A lot of reuses, but even to the point of like, we had to design like a retirement home, and we could only create 2 characters for this world. So we're supposed to fill this place full of old people. And so I had to figure out a way within which we could like create a variety of old people without having to like change the model really all that much. So part of it was a bit of creative problem solving, instead of like figuring out like, all right, if color switches are, we can pick, we can adjust all the time. But the model adjustments, like you put a dress on her, or you put, hair on them, or you put, even to the point of like, all right, like how do our blend shapes work? Can we like inflate breasts and then transform this man into
that's how you get good, right? That's how
it was a lot of problem solving. I mean, it was interesting, but that was one of my more clever moments, was realizing like, oh my gosh, like I can add a lot of variety by just like making switches to the genders of these characters, so that, yes, obviously they're going to all look somewhat the same, and it'll be called out, but at least like your brain, because the silhouette will be slightly different, will help translate that.
Super interesting. Yeah, I think it's something you usually encounter in TV work, all these limitations. I feel like if you work on I never worked on like a huge feature yet, on Pixar or something, but I feel like it's less it's less limiting, right? Like they can just put millions of money on something and solve whatever you want. It's less present.
Yeah, there's a lot more problem solving in the TV space that is more budgetary, but sometimes creates some interesting methodologies and ideas.
Cool. So let's move on. What I want to ask you, what draws you into a project? Is it like the people, the content? Is it the style? Is it the pay? What's like the most important thing for you?
All of it, all of that. I mean, each show is, like I said, is different in so many different ways. Some shows we take because we need the finances. Some shows we take because they're creatively fulfilling. Some shows we take because we like the people. I feel like it's all of it. The ideal situation is a show that, pays your bills, has a great crew, and creatively fulfills. Whether or not that is every show fluctuates. Whether or not that's the show that you're on changes. I've had shows where I love the people, but I hate the style. And I've had shows where, I don't like the people, but like the style is keeping me there because that's creatively fulfilling. I think it's picking and choosing what level of that exists or like needs to exist to stay. I'll be the first to sort of admit like the Bob's Burgers style, and I've worked now on 2 shows that are on that style. Like stylistically, it's not particularly interesting to me. The writing is great. Central Park, the music and the voice acting are tremendous. Super proud and super excited of the work we did there because I liked what was being produced in the content. Stylistically, stylistically, was it challenging or interesting? It's TV animation it's adult animation. It's meant to be unappealing to children. It's, the design is not meant to be beautiful.
Yeah.
But I loved the crew. Like, the people I got to work with and see every day, like, are wonderful friends now. And like, we stay in touch. Like, we see each other, on weekends. Like, I got to know a really lovely family there.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
in that scenario, like, was it the most creatively fulfilling? Not particularly, but that's okay. Ultimately, I got to go into work every day and like spend time with people I really enjoyed and make something that we knew was really cool, even though it wasn't the most creatively fulfilling. So all that to say is, like, it is just a balance. It's a matter of like, what are your priorities? What do you want to spend your time doing, and who do you want to spend your time doing that with? And to be fair, most of the shows that I've worked on, I rarely watch or will rewatch, because if I see an episode that I've worked on, immediately my mind goes to like everything that was happening at the time, and I completely forget to watch the episode. I begin reminiscing about what was happening at the time that I was working on that episode.
Actually, I had a teacher in art school. I'm not gonna mention her name, but she worked as an animator on Disney on what's the name, the Frog movie,
The Princess and the Frog.
Princess and the Frog. She's an excellent 2D animator, and that when she was giving us classes, I told her, hey, did you see the teaser for Klaus, because it was just like surfacing on the internet, and she said, oh yeah, it looks amazing. I was like, are you gonna work on that? Like, I was one of these students that like decided about their teachers, and she was like, oh, actually, I kind of don't want to. Like, I wanna enjoy it as a movie,
Yeah, it's exactly right. Like, when you've touched something or like worked on it, it's sort of like, even within your own work, you can go back to your own work and like see all the flaws and all the places that you didn't like resolve in a way that you would later as you've learned things and grown. So those shows end up becoming kind of a testament of like where you were. So like going back and rewatching like Boss Baby, I can't do it. There's design choices that I've made that I'm like, what on earth was I thinking? Was this a limitation thing because of the models, or was this just because like I didn't know? Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's purely me. But you go back and see those things, and you're like, okay. Well,
I wonder if like if those people who worked on like actual classics, like, I don't know, The Lion King or something, can actually watch it as a movie and like really feel the cultural impact that what the work has.
Yeah.
It's I hope they can, because otherwise it's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I think currently, from like myself, like working on a show like Cuphead, like that to me was like the perfect combination of fascinating style, unbelievable team that I have fallen in love with, and like again, one of my better paying jobs. Like, it was this perfect, like, all three of them coming together into this like beautiful 2 years of my life of just the most creatively fulfilling work that I got to do. So like that show, I think I can go back and watch and just be like, man, we did some really cool stuff. But also, like, that show is nothing to do with like my personal style, and like really challenged me to learn quite a bit in terms of how to make that style work.
That llama looks unhappy.
I mean, llamas are generally unhappy.
Are they?
Yeah, they're not nice. In every experience I've had with a llama, they are not kind animals.
They look so fluffy and inviting, like visually.
Yeah. Like, if there's an animal that has a bigger ego than a llama, I'd love to see it, because every single one I've met thinks that they are egos? Like the king.
I know nothing about llamas. I just love how they look, And I also love
I feel like at some point we should take a trip to South America, and then I will introduce you to a llama, and you'll understand like the arrogance that these animals have. Is
you wanna see me getting spit on?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
You'll be like, hey, Maor, here's a llama. We
Yeah,
do it like
go,
your
and
phone.
then I'll just slowly step away.
Yeah, they can be nasty. So there's a few questions on the
Yeah, go
chat.
for it.
Julia asks, can you tell us please how many hours every day do you practice?
I should practice more.
But I mean,
I
is
always
work considered practice? Because
that's kind of it. Like, I feel like work is a bit of practice, right? Like I'm striving to hit a specific style. I'm working on, trying to and drawing. In terms of like personal time, I would say I at least try and give myself at least an hour a day of just personal drawing, and that's mostly just so that like I can have some fun. And we started drawing because it was entertaining. We started drawing because we wanted to not be bored. And so I think I try and always go back to that idea of just draw something to make yourself happy. Like, it's not here, I'm not doing this to, like, yes, I'm learning something out of it, and I might enjoy the process of trying to like learn how to better draw hands. But in terms of what I'm actually doing daily, it's mostly for like it's selfish. It's mostly just like to entertain myself, to like give myself some play, because I think in those moments, like, we are still learning. It's a little less focused, a little less intentional, and I think that there's time for that because the rest of my life is so focused and intentional that I want to give myself space to make mistakes and laugh at my drawings and poke fun at myself.
Yeah, I really missed like drawing as a kid, and only recently I kind of freed myself up to draw a bit more in that way, to like sit down and like not have a project, not like have it be about a portfolio piece, to just I feel like drawing, I don't know, a lizard man with 3 eyes today, and I'm just gonna do that and like see what comes up, and if it's nice, I'll also post it. Because as a kid I will just take like every day I would finish like, I don't know, like 100 pieces of A4 paper. And just draw on both sides too. I would draw so much, and like thinking back, I'll be like, what drove me? Like, how I never in my life did I draw so much. Like, what was that?
Yeah.
And I think it was that freedom of like, oh, so a new paper is like a new idea. Nobody told me what to do. I can just be as free as possible.
Yeah. As far as and just to like follow up on Julia's question, like I also teach twice a week, so like I am constantly, like, at least twice a week for 5 hours at a time, like I'm constantly drawing over things and like correcting proportions and fixing hands and adjusting for simple versus complex. And so I'm constantly in a space where I'm having to correct and make those sorts of adjustments. And so that forces me to also, I mean, and more you and I have discussed this, where like some of the best learning you can do is by teaching, because when you're holding somebody else accountable for a mistake or for like a design principle, that makes you really double down like on yourself not making that same mistake.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's an element to like within the teaching that I feel like that's really where I'm getting a lot of my like my learning time. I agree. I just get paid to do it now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. A few days ago I was drawing a character and like kind of I didn't give so much love to the hands. I looked at it and I was like, will I let a student slide that,
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right.
Cool. So let's see. Tell please, what is your favorite project on which you have worked?
Oh, I mean, Cuphead, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
You guys, it's such a special show. I can't wait for everyone to see it. It's so much fun. It goes back to like what made animation fun to begin with, for us. I think like so often nowadays we get caught in narrative storytelling with like a 3-act structure, and then if you go back and watch those old cartoons from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, like there wasn't a lot of story. It was, here's the problem, and now let's do a whole lot of like jokes to solve it.
Yeah,
So it just became this like parade of like really interesting, really bizarre, really pushed animation for no reason other than this stuff needs to move in like a way that it couldn't in the real world. And so it just becomes this like playful experience of just seeing how clever and how pushed and how surprising the animation can be. And the thing with the Cuphead show is like that's a lot of what this was based on. There is a narrative through line because that is what our audiences sort of expect nowadays. But there's this joyful element of like just being playful with animation again that I particularly enjoyed and had many conversations about with the show runners that, that's what they were excited about too.
That's super awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited to see it. Yeah, we're talking a lot about this show. I think we should also get Netflix to sponsor this.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is free promo for them.
So some more questions for me. What type of art actually interests you outside of animation?
Ooh,
What do you like to look at?
I like sculpture a lot.
Really?
Yeah, like I think of the art that I have in my house, it's about a 50-50 split between like flat art pieces, like paintings and drawings, and sculpture. Like I just am fascinated with like the tactile, fully like 3-dimensional designed character or object. Like the other day I went and spent money just buying toy cars because I love the way that like they were designed and how they looked. Awesome. And like it's just beautiful shape combinations. So
that's not a really typical toy car.
No, and that's why I bought it. I just was fascinated with like how it was designed.
Awesome. And are you interested in like classical art as well, or just contemporary?
Yes. No, yeah. I mean, I'm also a big art history lover. I'm a big fan of the Baroque and sort of the Romantic periods, the neoclassical. There's something about like Bouguereau or Alphonse Mucha or Klimt, like there's a beautiful combination of texture and shape and color and performance that in that like that, I guess, couple 100-year now gap that's particularly fascinating to me. Caravaggio's expressiveness, like the lighting is great and I understand why people love him for that, but I think his expressiveness in his faces and in his like hands and like figures are they're so bright, they're so alive, more so than like oftentimes we see in classical sort of more Renaissance style paintings, this sort of very subdued, very graceful, very at peace sort of drawing that like Bouguereau's got this painting that's at the Le d'Orsay that is of Dante in hell, and it's this demon that's biting the throat out of a guy, and it's such like it's so alive. The gesture is so strong, and if you look at it, like the figure is completely broken, like functionally impossible to do. But the way that he's pushed the gesture and changed it to like just push that immediacy, that like vibrancy, I absolutely love. So, in terms of sculpture, that's where I lean in for like my fascination of shapes and good design. And in terms of like classical art.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Super cool.
I like the really performative ones.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's something that a lot of like animators and it turns out, is wire sculptures.
Yeah, I mean,
because it kind of it's also flat but also volumetric, just like a good animation drawing should be, I guess. Like Milt Kahl, I think, after he retired from Disney, started doing a lot of wire sculptures.
that's interesting to know. Yeah, I mean, I know that like for Inside Out, they did a lot of, or not Inside Out, for Soul, they did a lot of wire sculpture to sort of define a lot of the character work that they did.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
Such a good movie, like beautifully designed.
Also, the fact that like part of the illustrator that they were looking at for the character design for the humans was one of my favorites, which is Ronald Searle, who's incredible. It's hard to see how that would translate into 3D, and I think that they did a really nice job of like finding that very specific middle ground that sort of feels more refined. But like Searle's work is all about really expressive dirty lines, and like designing characters is performing really well but being kind of grotesque and kind of ugly in a way that I think most illustrators nowadays tend to be a little bit afraid of.
I think Searle kind of mocks his characters.
Yeah, well, and one of the
it's
things
never flattering caricature. It's all about like just pushing it in the most ugliest ways possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, contextually, he's coming up in a time where, so he's just been fighting in World War II, and he has come back to England, and all of the nobility and sort of the blue bloods are suddenly having to like, they had to foot the bill for a lot of the war. They don't have a lot of money left over. They're all struggling to sort of like keep their giant houses and all their staff and everybody sort of employed and working. And, this elitist element, plus you have these social revolutions going on as well, that ultimately, because he was of working class, was able to look at and sort of mock and make fun of. And that sense of humor at like these very posh, very stuffy old people became the focus of his work. And especially after having seen war, up close, and he was like a prisoner of war in the South Pacific.
Have you seen his sketches from
they're amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
So
different.
Seeing that, like, of course he's going to make fun of it. Like, get over yourselves is kind of the perspective. But I love his work. And then, the transition of him like moving into the 40s and then the 50s and the 60s, and sort of then starting to make fun of the older generations as they're going on vacation. Just everybody looks like a pair of testicles after a while. Like I
love his old British ladies. They're my favorite.
Yeah. I have a print of his up on our living room wall of a bunch of old people vacationing in Hawaii, and the amount of skin visible.
Yeah, right. Like he loves drawing the textures of like the wrinkles and all that stuff. Yeah, that's awesome. So
it was one of the things I was concerned about. Like when Iggy and I first moved in together, I was like, "Are you okay with me putting this on the wall?" And he's like, "I love this piece. Like it's really funny." He goes, "Yes, they are so ugly and it's so awful," but at the same time, like he was very, very on board with that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
What were you gonna say?
But it's actually, it's all like the subjects are ugly, but like the work itself is like really aesthetic,
Yeah, it's beautifully composed. The designs of the figures, like they're so well balanced with like the big and medium and small shapes.
Yeah.
Everything's super expressive.
So I was gonna ask, who are some of your favorite character designers like these days? Like, who do you draw inspiration from?
I don't really pull too much from many people nowadays that are currently working. I'm I don't know. I constantly adjust my style to just sort of whatever the character's needs are, like the story needs are, more than looking at other people's styles. Now, granted, this is slightly based on like some of Chris Sasaki's work, sort of flavor in terms of the stuff he did for Luca, but mostly it's that I'm fascinated by like the proportions and how it's built, and I like sort of the frivolousness of the line. But also like Sasaki works in many different styles, and I think that as you become a designer, that flexibility and that amount of play within style is compulsory. You kind of just have to do it. Like I've had to work on, multiple shows, from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Boss Baby to Central Park. So I'm adjusting constantly. So when I sit down and do things for myself, I'm mostly focusing on like what's the story that I want to tell and just sort of seeing what comes out. I'm rarely studying other designers for the most part, because I feel like everyone does this, and it's about the exploration of like the voices of the characters and the voices of the stories, more than it is about like what does Glenn Keane do regularly. And Glenn Keane like was somebody that I studied a ton from when I was first starting out, just because I wanted to figure out like how on earth he got such malleability with so much detail on the faces. But yeah, I think now it's at a point where like I'm able to construct and I'm able to balance that. Like I just sort of throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, what stays around. That, and cool. I mean,
I get it.
Because of my work with like my students, I think there's also this element that I'm constantly having to adjust to what they're thinking in terms of what they want to do stylistically and what rules they're following, that I'm mostly learning through, trying to resolve other people's design problems, that now I think I just have like a library in my head of things that I could do.
Yeah, I think a style is something that's a bit over, I don't know, people talk about style a bit too much. I think great designers, they can shift their style, but like there is always good design underneath it, like they get the basics right. They get like the craft.
Question I think is
they
like
control the craft.
Yeah, like what is design, or like what is a style? Well, it's just a set of rules that you.
It's limitations, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a nose. We don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. So playing with that, like in terms of what my aesthetics are, like what I do stylistically, I could not tell you what my style is. I have no idea. But I do know that there's something there that is beyond my knowledge of what I do, because anybody who sees my work and knows me can tell me which piece is mine.
Yeah.
And
how do you feel about that? Do you like that, or like do you feel weird about it?
I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I think part of it is, I think my insecurities make me feel like if they can tell which one's mine, then I've done something wrong. There's something that I've missed.
They see my mistakes.
Exactly.
My mistakes, yeah.
But I think that that's the wrong way to look at it. I think it has more to do with, there's just something inherent about like the way that I draw that people are able to pick out.
It makes sense, because in the end, like, even though we study those amazing people like Chris Sasaki or Glenn Keane or whatever, we can't really copy them like perfectly. There's always something from who we are is going to slip into the drawing,
Well, and I think and this is something I tell my students often is, if you're trying to be the next Glenn Keane, or you're trying to be the next, Ronald Searle or whomever, it's one thing to work in that style, but you are not them. You don't have their brain. Your brain is different, and therefore you trying to emulate them completely and become, you know, a master of that style, unfortunately, it's always going to be more work for you than it ever was for that original designer.
Yeah.
Because that original designer is drawing off of instinct. You know, they're not even aware of how they're making the decisions they're making, where you as the emulator are trying to, you know, control every little bit. And I think a good designer is a designer that's able to just let go and let the drawing tell them what it needs to do, rather than having to like control every decision.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's also about, people say, how do you find your own style? I think it's about just listening to your tendencies and accepting them.
Yeah. Well,
really,
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And it's tricky because sometimes you, when you study artists, you tend to also copy their style a bit. But when I study, I try to actively like think more about their decision making, and not just per se just copy like they're exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, I think so often when I was younger, I would focus on like, how are they getting their line to do what it's doing, and I'd sit there and like focus specifically on like, no, that's not gestural enough, and like we get so caught up. And I think this is why like we poke fun at people who are like, what brush do you use? And it's like, that's not important. Like, yes, it does have an effect on a drawing, but the reality is like, we're not thinking about the brush as we're drawing. We're thinking about what the story is, how we're balancing like the design principles, are we balancing the performance with design, and like which one is stronger? We're not sitting there worrying about like the quality of the line. And eventually that does kind of become part of it, but like the reason the drawings, yeah, exactly. The reason the drawings work is because I did a whole lot of other thinking. For you to think that it's just because I had this like Shiyun brush, like,
which are sexy, by the way,
which are very sexy, but also it's such a minuscule part of the greater conversation that we're having with the pieces that we're making.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But to go back to what you were sort of hitting at is, design or sort of personal style is something that constantly changes as well. I mean, look at Picasso, look at like the different movements of his work. He has his blue period, he has the early stages of abstract, you have his like more classical representative work. But the thing that makes him interesting is like he was an active and prolific artist for so long, and a popular artist for so long, that every single addition or change or growth within his personal taste and style was completely documented. So you can see the growth and the change and the adjustment that he makes. And so, can you say that Picasso has a style? If abstract is a style purely, then yes. But like the nuances of that adjust so often. And I like to think about that in terms of like, what am I aiming for? Am I trying to gain a style, or am I just going to draw and let my work speak for itself? Let my work tell me where I'm going. Let my interests sort of take control and sort of, I don't know, enjoy the journey.
It's two different things. More. Like, I think that as a professional, you're often asked to mimic a style or to nail a style for production, and that's a craft. Like that's something you learn how to do. But when it comes to actually drawing in your own style, some people are stuck in that mindset of like trying to control that, and it's the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do, from my experience at least.
No, yeah, I mean, that's why I don't teach, like I don't teach specific styles in my class, because it's like, also like by the time my students get out into the real world, like those styles will have changed. Those styles will have turned into new styles. And so I focus more on trying to teach, like, let's observe style. Let's figure out what the rules are. Let's learn how to dissect what style is, rather than me sitting here and spending 3 weeks teaching you how to draw like Milt Kahl. Why? Nobody's drawing like that anymore for animation, which is tragic, but at the same time, it's impractical. So I choose not to focus too much on like any one specific style.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually watched The Jungle Book like a few days ago.
Ugh,
After like so long, and it's such a lovely movie. Just
it's such a good movie. That
it's so simple, like the story and everything, but at the same time so charming and memorable.
yeah, that story is a lot more of like a tone than it is like a
Yeah.
proper narrative. And
Like
have
a
you
bit
ever
like
read the book?
Totoro, right?
Yeah. Have you ever read the book, The Jungle Book?
No, but I hear it's a. First of all, I know it's way longer, and it's pretty dark, isn't it?
I mean, it's. I mean, I guess there are a lot more themes with death involved, but like the actual film, like has quite a bit in it as well. You know, with Mowgli's parents and Shere Khan killing them, and you know the wolves raising him and learning how to hunt and all that stuff. But
No, but in the Disney version, like they say nothing about that.
well, they just. I feel like it's just implied.
That Shere Khan killed them. I don't know. I'm not sure. But okay.
Anyway, the book is great, but it's more of a series of short stories more than it is like an actual narrative. So what the film does well is actually take that idea and kind of runs with it. It you know, you can sort of see like the elephants marching and sort of being very regimented, specific to a story that is in the book about, you know, these wild elephants that were trained by an old elephant who sort of worked in the military, in the Indian military.
Super cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically it's a tour. You get to meet the different animals in the jungle, and like Mowgli is kind of the line between those chapters, you know, and like the story is a secondary thing almost. Like the way the movie the conflict is resolved is like ridiculous. It happens so quickly, and they're like, it just it's ridiculous almost. To just tie like a stick with fire to Shere Khan's like tail, and he runs away, and that's it.
Yeah. How do we solve it? We'll just tie a stick to it.
Yeah, so we're almost out of time. We have like about 12 minutes. Let's see if there is anything interesting.
Any more questions?
Actually, let's check the chat. Okay, so I can't read the name because I think it's in Japanese or Chinese or a language I don't know. But they say, hello, just curious, do you happen to like making stop motion animations too? Because you mentioned that you like sculptures.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I do. Like watching Coraline or Paranorman, like Leica does such a brilliant job with their stuff, but also just like anything that involves, you know, a making of, I enjoy, particularly like the Lord of the Rings movies. I geeked on in high school, and like definitely they had a huge influence in my like growing up and wanting to become an artist elements. But particularly I love watching like the Weta Workshop stuff, and just seeing like how all those giant like miniature sets got built. Like, it's so great.
Yeah. I recently watched the first teaser for Box Trolls. It's a movie by Leica, and they kind of made it all about just the making of. Like you see animators just putting those little details and like moving the and you can, and then it kind of becomes alive, and you see like actual scenes from the movie, and just it's magic. It's pure magic.
Yeah,
like, there's no other way to describe it.
Well, there's also that bit
at so great.
That end of that movie where you have the voice actors for the two henchmen sort of having this existential conversation about like, what if?
It's actually the only part I remember from that movie, unfortunately.
I mean, it's such a great joke.
Yeah. And have you seen the new teaser for Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro?
I did. I wish that there was more. The funny thing is, he's been working on this movie since I was in college. Like, I
But
know
nobody
Helen
wanted to
Chen.
fund it, nobody
Yeah,
gave him money to do it. Even after like he won the Oscars, like he barely got like money to make that show.
yeah. Yeah, I remember I had college friends that worked on some visual development for it, like way back in the day when we were in college, and like I remember having seen a few like images here and there, but yeah, it's been out there for a while.
Mm.
Um,
But I think
I'm
that cricket
curious. I
design is
mean,
pretty cool. Like
huh?
for the cricket design is pretty
Oh,
cool. And I
yeah,
think for like the style that emerges from only those few visuals that we get to see is pretty fascinating.
yeah. I mean, he look. I I love his design sensibility so very much. You know, maybe not all of his films are perfect, but I think he loves good design and good like ambiance and like building a world. That's really what I love about his work. Like Pan's Labyrinth is spectacular. That
Mm.
monster with the eyes in
Yeah,
its
yeah,
hands
yeah.
is like it's still the scariest like monster that I can think of. Um, I'm curious to see. I know that this film, based on like what his aesthetics are, is going to be beautiful to look at. Story wise, I have no idea. I wish that there was maybe a little bit more in the trailer. Obviously, it's a teaser, so it's meant to just whet the appetite.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll see.
Well,
I
that
mean, I'm
story's been
excited.
told so many times, so you
Also, yeah,
get a bit skeptical about, okay, what's he gonna do differently?
yeah, and I mean, my one thought is this one looks like it's maybe gone a little bit more kid friendly for Guillermo del Toro. I mean, I know that like the Trolls, uh, Tales of Arcadia stuff obviously was meant for kids, but
But did he direct that or just produce it?
he produced it.
Mm.
I think he did have a hand in some of the direction and sort of where it was going to go, but I'm curious to see how kid friendly he makes this, and I kind of hope that he keeps it fairly dark. I'd be rather fascinated to see something that has a bit more grit or more tooth to it
Yeah.
than
I miss
than
those
the
Hellboy
standard
movies.
Pinocchio. Well, they're making a new one.
Are they? Like a
Yeah,
third one?
Ron Perlman just like talked about it, I think yesterday, about, he goes, yeah, it's not going to be great to be 71 years old playing Hellboy, but like the
Fuck,
audience
is that
deserves
old?
it.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I I'm interested. I think that he is the only
I
person
love the
alive who's allowed to
creatures
play
and
him.
like the general production design on those movies. They're so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, same. I mean, again, his aesthetic choices are brilliant. I'm curious about Mignola's involvement as well. I hope that he's involved.
Mm. Like Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. We kind of have to wrap up. It's been
Okay.
already almost an hour and a half. Yeah.
Always happy to chat.
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure, absolute pleasure. It was really, really nice to have you on the first show, the first episode. I'm sorry you
Thanks.
didn't get to finish your llama.
I
I hope you
mean,
finish it later.
yeah, he was the kid I knew how to draw. The llama took a little more time than I think I was ready to commit to.
Nice, man.
But
But it looks lovely. Yeah,
it's a nice little moment.
it was really interesting to see you kind of develop those and solving those problems, especially those back legs of the llama.
Yeah, once they became nice and skinny, I was like, okay, I think I've got it now. I needed to pull in this like narrowness of the design.
Cool, awesome, dude. All
Well,
right,
thanks for having
so
me, man. Good to
yeah,
hang
yeah,
out.
with pleasure. It was really, really fun, and we should do this again, maybe off, not live next time. Yeah, I want to thank again to Animation Club. Thanks for sponsoring and producing this show. It's been a really fun hour and a half, and I hope the viewers already also enjoyed, just like we did. And yeah, definitely check their platform and their courses and my course. And yeah, looking up for the next show. We're gonna have a new guest, and we're gonna just have fun again. So thanks everyone. Thanks Adam,
Yeah, thanks, more.
and see you guys next time. Bye. Hey there, my name is Maor Sharvit. I'm a visual development artist and instructor at the Animation Club. I want to invite you to my new online class, Introduction to Visual Development for Animation. Over the years, I had the pleasure of learning from incredible artists from all over the world. I went to the Animation Workshop and Gobla and had the opportunity to work with such companies as Cartoon Saloon, Lighthouse Studios, Nexus, Wharf, and more. Now I feel that it's my time to share some of that knowledge and help new talents develop their skills and get work. In the course, we'll cover many subjects that are essential for designers in animation. We'll start with the very basic principles of design and learn from past masters and also some contemporary ones. After that, we'll focus more on drawing, characters, and environments. I'll share some concepts with you that will help make your designs feel grounded, solid, and exist in space. Later, we'll talk specifically about character design, set design, prop, color, and even cover such topics as world building and art direction. In the end of the course, you'll work on a final project, which will cover everything that we talked about, and it will be a lot of fun. So if you have a great passion for what you do, and the will to put in the work and get to the next level, go visit AnimationClub.School. I'll be waiting for you there.